surround yourself with people that want you to grow. Even listening to motivational speeches, I know it sounds a little bit lame, but they work. Improving constantly, I think, is my main motto in life. I learned everything from scratch, really, and I asked for a lot of help.
Hi, and welcome to the HackCess Show. It's the place where you can find life hacks on how to become the best version of yourself and achieve your goals. We show you how to walk the talk from successful people. And today we have Kate here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
So do you want to give us a quick overview of what you do for the viewers?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Kate Broug. I'm an entrepreneur. I own 2 companies. I'm a private pilot, a podcast host, and animal rights activist. I'm doing this call from New York, and that's where my companies are based too. And yeah.
So you were already like in the entrepreneur's business and all that, or is this something you kind of fell upon?
Yeah, I fell into it actually because I was, the thing I started with was dance. I did contemporary ballet until I was 23, I'm now 28. And that's what my life was all about from the age of 3. So that was my main focus. And then all of a sudden, it started with a trip to Bhutan, which is a country in Asia. And I came there and it was such a beautiful and inspiring country. It's Buddhist, they have all these values that I've never, felt before. And I'm not really an energetic or like floaty person, but when I landed in Bhutan, I felt the energy. And I don't like using that word a lot, but I've just felt that this was a special country. And the more I learned about the country, the more I knew that it was. So I wanted to take something from that country to the West because I felt like we could learn a lot from that country. And that's when my first company was born. So that's where the switch from dance to entrepreneurship started.
And about that switch, how did it, or did you jump into it, both feet in it, and did you leave dance behind, or did you try and keep both worlds alive, and how does that work now?
Yeah, so I'm definitely still dancing. I mean, now it's a little bit tricky with COVID, right? But I did it, side by side. I still dance to keep my body into shape, and it's been a part of me for so long. So that will never leave me. But I think it was a gradual, the shift was gradual, I think.
And are there principles from ballet that you can now use in your business?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, great question. There are a lot of things that you would think, okay, one is very creative, it's the art world, and the other is a much more sort of left brain thing. But actually, I think being able, because in dance you have to be in a studio, right? All day, you have to work as hard as you can. The competition is really hard. It's a discipline that you have to dedicate your life to. So I was already used to that kind of intensity, and I kind of shifted that from dance to, all the other things I'm doing now.
So you had to like learn everything, like all the principles about business, how to create a company and all that to be able to get your company starting and all that? Or did you had already like some basics and
no, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I knew nothing. Yeah, I just, looking back at it now, I think the fact that I thought I would be able to do it kind of came out of nothing, because my parents or my family is, everyone is either an artist or they work with their hands, the crafts, or they're nurses. So nobody really was in business. It was quite a low income family. So I wasn't used to, people building companies or even dealing with finances. So I learned everything from scratch, really. And I asked for a lot of help and got that help. So
did you get like mentors and all that to get started, or people helping you like?
Yeah.
I guess you're like asking for advice on the street in New York, or
it's like, hey, give me some advice. No, yeah, I definitely had mentors, people close to me that gave me advice. And then a while ago, I started this podcast, which really helped me, because I tend to only found sort of male mentors, but I really wanted to meet people, women that I would aspire to and who were my role models. So I started the Pivotal Moment podcast, which is a podcast that covers, every episode covers the life of of an exceptional women entrepreneur. And now it's actually also spreading out a little bit, because I have a very cool guest on the 16th, which is Karen Dunn, and she's was the senior advisor of Hillary Clinton, and she did the presidential debate prep for President Obama, for Kamala Harris, and also Hillary Clinton. So being able to be so close with, I mean, what you guys do, right? You want to be able to feel that energy. And I wanted to talk to powerful and inspiring and stimulating women that love their work. And I want to see how they formulate sentences, and I see how they think, and see how they, you know, how they process things, and kind of adopt that in a way, right? So I forgot the question, but
me too. Like,
going on my own route. So if I do that, just stop me.
Yeah, it's the point. No worries.
And speaking of this, you know, talking with these inspiring people and just getting something from their minds and inspiring yourself, how do you, on a day-to-day basis, keep yourself motivated or get inspired? Do you have like rituals that you do or something to keep that flame going?
I mean, I stay pretty motivated. I'm a pretty motivated person, so I keep track of. When I lose it, you know, there are days that you think, what am I doing? I tend to listen to, so for example, or think about what people have said on these podcasts, or go to YouTube and listen to people I think are very interesting and did a great job, and being inspired by them. I mean, even listening to motivational speeches, I know it sounds a little bit lame, but they work, right? So I don't have rituals per se. I mean, I eat the same breakfast every day. That's a ritual. I tend to I tend to plan ahead a lot, so I know exactly what I'm going to do every day, and that keeps me from not panicking or thinking, "Oh, am I on the right path?" So that would be a ritual, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of planning, how do you set your goals? Do you use like a certain, I don't know, a certain template to do so?
So I mean, that's an interesting question, because I think something I started with because I have my pilot's license, and something I started with after I started flying. There are two elements. Is actually long-term planning, but when I say long, I mean long. And I think the two elements that I needed for that, I took from aviation. And one is the fact that the first time I soloed, so I was by myself in a plane, or actually it wasn't the first time I soloed, because the first time I soloed, I was just afraid that I was going to kill myself and crash the plane. But the first time I soloed and actually felt comfortable in the airplane, I was able to look outside and look down at Earth and see that and think, and actually also feel a distance between me and my life on Earth. It sounds a bit cheesy, but and being able to have that perspective did make me think, okay, you know, we're humans, we are born and we'll die. So why can't I think about my life when I'm 75 or 65? You know, God's willing, if I let's hope I survive, or don't get very ill, I will one day be 75 or 65. And what do I want my life to be like? And how do the actions, or do the things I do today, influence that life when I'm 75? So that was one element. The second element was, when you learn how to fly, you really learn how to plan precisely. Because I did a presentation for the University of Buffalo about the correlation between entrepreneurship and aviation. And one things I covered in that was that it's human nature to not do the things that are tedious and annoying unless they threaten our lives. And with aviation, if you don't plan precisely, so if you don't look at the weather precisely, if you don't interpret external factors precisely, you can kill yourself, right? So you make sure you finish that planning. And being able to go through that process of, you know, dreadful planning, because, you know, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review that planning precisely can hurt you. It's painful. So to be able to go through that was a really good experience. And then I tried to put those things together, and I made a planning until I was 75 years old. And, you know, admittedly, I spent the night with gin and tonic in my hand, because I was a little bit depressed about thinking about yourself when you're 65, because I'm 28 now. So I don't want to think about that, but I think it's essential to plan that far ahead. That's what I do, and that's how I sort of, and then I work backwards. So think about, okay, what do I have to do on a daily basis to get where I want to be?
So I think it's pretty cool. You actually like you plan ahead, but not too precisely for like a margin of error to not be able to like get down if something doesn't go according to plan, right?
Yeah, because that's a big thing as well. And I actually covered this in the presentation as well. When you make a plan, it doesn't mean that you have to stick to that plan no matter what, right? Because actually, the Kobe Bryant crash, the helicopter crash, the main reason when you look at the NTSB report, the main cause of that crash was planned continuation bias, which means that the pilot had a plan and wasn't able to divert from that plan. And that's why he crashed. I mean, there were a lot of other reasons, obviously. And I think Churchill said that as well. He said, plans are of little importance, but planning is essential. So it's not about sticking to that plan. It's about thinking about the possible options and thinking about, okay, seeing your life in a different perspective and seeing what could happen and what do you want your life to be like. So don't stick to the plan, but make a plan.
Yeah. And when that plan starts to change and when you know that you have to adapt to do something, what is the first thing that you do to adapt to a new situation? Is that something that you see in the moment, or is it always the same thing that you do to get back on track?
I mean, it depends what changes, right? So if things change because, pandemic happens, that changes things. You have to adapt in a different way than, what if you fire someone, right? So it depends.
Okay.
And I'm curious, like after your trip to Bhutan, did you become like super spiritual and all that, or?
No, I don't
No?
think so. No.
No.
I'm not. I mean, I can be spiritual, and I really appreciate and also I would say, looking at Buddhism, I think they're amazing values, right? That I want to adopt. I don't necessarily. I mean, I think there's a big tendency nowadays to be a lot busy with sort of spirituality and energy and all those things, and I don't think I am. But I do want to say that I appreciate Buddhism and I appreciate the values, and I think these people are so pure, and I think we can take something from that and also deepen ourselves in that thought process that they go through every day. So in that extent, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, kind of. I kind of do the same. Like I'm like, all right, I look at one thing and I'm like, all right, this thing could work for me. So I take principles from different, like maybe religions or other stuff, and like make my own religion. I don't know if it's something to say or not, but yeah, that's like I still start from other people.
Yeah, you have to know what works for you, I think. And I come from I'm Catholic background, so I think eventually if I would go back to any religion, it would be that one, because I know it and I've been, my parents gave it to me with love. But Buddhism in its purity has something unique about it. And also, with Anna In Bhutan, the products we have, they're blessed in Buddhist temples. So, and even though I'm not a Buddhist, I like to think of that as, those people have dedicated their life to being pure and being compassionate, and they infuse those scarves with a certain blessing. So they put their energy into it. And I think that's very special.
Yeah, definitely. And did you see like your vision of success change along the way and along the years, since you were not very like a business person at the beginning? So like, did you had a specific vision of success and now it's like completely different?
So when I started, because I started with dance, so my vision was being a professional contemporary ballet dancer until I couldn't do it anymore physically, and then turn into choreography and make that my life. But obviously that has changed. That was my vision of success then. But my vision of success now, yeah, it has changed. I think how I define success, and I've been thinking about this a lot during this past year, is freedom. The eventual goal is freedom. And this means financial freedom, because I grew up, like I said, in a low income background. Money was often an issue, we were happy, but there was always a limit to what we could do. And it's not that I want to do crazy things, I just don't want to have that worry. So that's one part of that success. And the other part of freedom is that I'm able to do the creative things and the projects that I'm doing now without having to worry about the financial aspect too. So freedom in general, I think, is just the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of freedom, I've always said that it's when we're most creative, when we feel free, when we feel kind of liberated, that's when we can get these ideas for amazing businesses or new kind of principles. If we have a lot of pressure to complete something, we might take that fear as motivation. But do you think that put against freedom, it's better in terms of the ideas that you can get and the kind of creative furnace that you can become?
Yeah, I think, putting some pressure on yourself, because otherwise it also depends. Look, it depends what your definition of success is, because I also want to say that I don't necessarily think that, career, for me it is, a successful career is important, right? But for people, or for women also, to have the idea, or for men for that matter, to have the idea that their definition of success is being a good mother, right? Or raising their kids in a really good way. I think, being a good parent is definitely an example of success, and a great example of success, because families, you guys know, divorces happen all the time. If you're focused on being a good parent, I think that's, just as successful. So putting pressure on yourself to be better than you are right now, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And do you focus on, maybe you have a vision for yourself, like, yeah, I don't want to like put you in a case with like, all right, you want kids and all that, or you get the cat already, so yeah, you keep this vision of yourself and you try to like go there, or how does it work?
So I think, those are the end goal thing. I don't really work with, because when people say, I mean, you didn't use the word end goal, but a lot of people do. And I think, if that's an end goal, what happens after, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it has the word end in it.
It's the end. Yeah.
But and then people say, okay, that's my end goal, but what happens after? Do you just fall down a cliff? No. So for me, it's more that these individual projects or steps are stepping stones, right? And they work towards something, and that something is always growing. And those things, but I don't necessarily work towards, because it also puts a lot of pressure on you. If you say, oh, this is my end goal, either you're going to not make it, or because first of all, it's very probable that you won't make it, because life happens and things change, right? But also, again, if you do achieve it, what happens then? That means that you'll have another end goal, which means that it's not an end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to think more in steps rather than.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you have this vision of like freedom, and you fly for pleasure. So it's not necessarily going from point A to point B, but just like fly around and have fun. So yeah.
And for being able to sort of constantly learn, I think that's important for me too. And maybe I'll fly for a job one day, and privately. I'd like to instruct too, flying too. So
are you more like focused on growing yourself, and so not necessarily with the end goals and the end in mind, but just like keep on becoming a better version of yourself, like every day or something like that?
Yeah, I think definitely improving constantly, I think, is my main motto in life. And learning constantly.
Yeah. And before we spoke about when you went to, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, but Bhutan, I think it is.
Bhutan.
Yes. When you went there, and then and you came back, and you wanted to share this or some ideas, or even some energy from the east to the west. Did you bring with you a process like meditation? Do you do something like that?
I don't meditate. I do want to go to Bhutan and actually learn it from the source, right? So actually learn it from people who do meditation, have been doing meditation all their lives. So I think I would like to do that. At the moment, I don't, because I'm just not. I feel like I meditate when I work out. I meditate when I reflect. I meditate when I go to bed. I do breathing exercises, but I don't necessarily want to call it meditation.
Yeah, that's a great idea, learning from the source. I think that, I at least don't do that at all. I find myself just looking at things on the internet, learning from people who've learned from someone who has learned. But do you think there's still so much, like, that it's still the best thing to learn at the source from the person or from the people who are actually in the practice itself?
Yeah, I think, and I think that also translates to a lot of other fields, because when I want to, when I want to learn things, so for example, I did aerobatics, my first class in aerobatics, which is acrobatic as in an airplane, a couple of weeks ago, which is really cool. But I was, it was also a search of, okay, who am I going to do this with? And there were cheaper alternatives. But David Windmiller, who's this amazing, he's been doing aerobatics since he was 14. He's flown in all the different kinds of airplanes. He's had 21 engine failures. He's landed planes on highways, on grass fields, on whatever you can imagine. He has a jet. So with that, I thought, if I want to learn, and even though it's going to be a little bit more expensive, I'll work harder, but I want to make sure that if I learn, I want to hear it from the person that does it best. So that also ties into what you say, if I want to learn more about meditation, I want to go to people whose life is, in that, that is in the, sorry, I have a really good expression in Dutch, but their life is about meditation. Their life is meditation, and I want to learn from them.
Yeah, no, that does make so much sense to me, but I find myself kind of taking the easier options, before we spoke of price sometimes, it's hard to get to the person who's the best at what they do to teach you something. But do you think that it's worth, let's say, if you have to pay $300 to get that coaching from the best person ever, or pay $100 to get it from someone who learned from that person, do you think it's better to save up to the $300? Or
yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother with, okay, I don't want to be crude, but I wouldn't bother going to people who heard it from someone else, because they'll interpret it in their own way. And if that interpretation is something that you feel drawn to more than the other person, then yeah, I would go for the other person. But if you can have one lesson with that really good person, or 3 with that sort of average person, go to the person that's best.
Yeah. And I think it's always like, if money was no object, which one would you pick? Like, you would pick the best, it's always,
exactly. And you just work harder to get that money, and of course it's not, but nowadays with with internet, you can go on YouTube and see people speak anyway, so you don't, everything is within reach.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I also think that humans, and that's also something, which I knew before, is that humans are very adaptive, right? So we tend to have an adaptive nature because we function in group formats. And in order to thrive in those group formats, we need to be able to adapt ourselves to it. So, and that can happen for better, but also for worse. So if you surround yourself with people who are self-indulgent and negative and bad-tempered, even if you're not that way, you'll adopt some of those principles. But if you surround yourself with people who are inspiring and stimulating and all those things, you will adopt some of those. And I think it's very important, even when we're talking about having a class of somebody, the expert in the field, or the semi-expert, or the pupil of the expert in the field, you want to go to the source.
Yeah. And you do like a lot of fun stuff, and you're a business person too. So like, how do you manage all that, and how do you balance all your time? I feel like, we're talking to you, and I feel like all your life is fun stuff. I'm like curious. how do you balance the work and the not so fun stuff with the fun stuff?
Okay, but first you have to say what is the fun stuff? What in your eyes are the fun stuff? And
like more. I guess, that's a good question, but
flying, the acrobatics in the plane, that does sound fun.
That does sound fun, yeah.
All right, no, I think there are a lot of elements, but even flying, like I said, it's not, if you go look at the theory part of it, it's not fun. Having all that, being able to pass your exam, it takes so much time to learn all the things you need to learn about aviation, to learn about engines, which is something that doesn't come natural to me at all. I never even looked at a car engine, I didn't really care about cars or engines until I saw a plane. I was like, oh yeah, I want to learn this. So it's not all fun. It definitely takes a lot of time for sure. And the way I make time for all of that is just by, working constantly.
So do you have like a ratio, like let's say I'm gonna work like 10 hours on my business so I can go like an hour doing like some stuff outside, or do you just like do whatever feels right?
I think generally I'm very bad at planning fun stuff because, like you said, the reward for me is actually being able to get one step further. So that's the fun stuff. So, and I tend to like to work. So
yeah.
I mean, it is a challenge, I think, for me to be able to schedule not work time. It's tricky because I want to be productive and learning all the time. So I think the ratio could be a little bit better, but right now it's my focus is work. So
okay. And regarding business, like what was like, if you have one advice to give to like young people who are just starting, like what is the one thing you'd like to leave people with?
Okay, so the planning is one thing that we talked about before.
Plan, but don't plan. Just create the plan and like
go be fluid with the plan, but be able to plan and be able to look at your life objectively or from a perspective, like a pilot's perspective, right? Look at it from a distance and think, and try to work it out. I was working with a friend of mine on planning for her life, and we sat over here, and I was like, look, what do you want in 25 years? How can you get there? And I know it sounds a bit basic, but go to the details. What kind of anyway, so long story short. But the other element that I want to talk about, which was what I mentioned before, is be aware of the fact that we're adaptive human beings. And I think generally people are quite astute at surrounding themselves with the right people professionally. But I think it's also very important to look at your personal life, because those are the people you wake up with, you go to bed with. When you're tired, those are the people you look at for inspiration and joy and, motivation. And if you surround yourself with people that don't facilitate your growth or don't want you to grow, and that often doesn't need to happen out of, malicious intent. It can happen because they love you and are fearful of losing you. So for example, friends that don't want you to grow away from them, or boyfriends or girlfriends that don't want you to take certain kind of steps that are outbound and, away from them mentally. But I think it is very important to know that we're able to choose the people we surround ourselves with. Because personally, I think privately people generally think that the people they meet just happen to them, right? It's just like, oh, I just met and I'm a victim of these circumstances, and how do I, and I can't let go. But actually you can't, you can choose who your friends are too. You can choose who your partner is, and be able to let go of those people if they're not, if they're a negative influence on you.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also, I also want to add that it doesn't mean that these people should all be wildly successful and career oriented, but they should be able to facilitate growth and be able to grow with you. And even if they don't want to grow, just be able to, give you that energy that you need in order to step into the world and be what you think you should be in life.
Yeah. And I think like people don't have the same risk tolerance, so if you're like, I don't know, like your best friend is somebody who likes to have a job and get the salary, the safety, all that, and you're an entrepreneur who likes to take giant risk, sometimes they feel like they're trying to protect you, but the advice is not really good, I guess.
And I mean, it's also, saying that, it's also really good to be with people who challenge you and don't just say what you want to hear, right? I think it's some of the people I appreciate most in my life are the people who actually tell me, show me the opposite view, and then I'll make my own decision anyways. But to be able to hear that and hear people and know that when you ask people for their advice, they will give it to you frankly, is also very important. So that's what I would say. Just, surround yourself with people that want you to grow.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. It's promo time for you. So time to promote everything, your podcast, the business, all that.
Okay, so first of all, you can follow me on Instagram at Broug. That's always a lot of fun. My podcast is called The Pivotal Moment. So I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs and also, again, powerful women, and they speak about their lives and about their successes and their failures. So definitely look that up. I'm on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Stitcher. Then my company, Anna In Bhutan, which is, blessed scarves from Bhutan, and will also launch teas. And we'll also go to Holland, which is where I'm from. Then if you have a kitty cat, I have a line of cat scratchers. It's called Cosmo's Own, and they're available on Amazon, but also on the website. And what then is, if you buy one, but also if you don't buy one, you should sign my petition, which is a petition against declawing. And we're trying to get that, illegalized. I don't know if that's a verb, but illegalized in more states in the United States. So